like we're good. Erica said it's live streaming.
Okay, it's always a little slower on my end when I set it up. All right, we're live streaming, so we can start this meeting. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our last TAC meeting for the Sherwood West Concept Plan. I'm glad all of you have made it here this afternoon. And I also just want to say thank you for holding out through this process over the past almost 2 years. So I'm really grateful for all of the input that you've provided us over this time. And with that, I'm just going to hand it over to Kate here.
Thanks, Erica. And I think before, I guess, do we have any public comment we need to get to first before we do?
We don't actually this afternoon.
No public comment. Okay. Yeah. So before I share my screen, maybe we'll just go around and do introductions. So Erica already introduced herself. I'll start. I'm Kate Rogers, Senior Planner with MIG APG. And let's see, I'll pass it over to Darcy and then we'll go to the other folks at the city.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Darcy Rudzinski, Principal and Project Manager at MIG Portland office, and I'm here to support the team in any way that I can.
Joy.
Hi, everyone. Joy Chang, Senior Planner with Sherwood. Eric?
Thanks.
Eric Rutledge, Community Development Director with the City of Sherwood. Just reinforce what Erica said. Thank you guys for all your work over the past 2 years. And it's been a long process. I know I just finished reading the plan and I think it's a great plan. So thank you to our consultants as well. So really happy to be at this point. It's a milestone to have the draft plan. So thank you guys.
How about Bruce?
Hi, I'm Bruce Coleman, Economic Development Manager at the City of Sherwood, and I'm really pleased with the progress that's been made on this plan.
Thanks, Bruce. Kristen?
Hi, I'm Kristen Schweitzer, Community Services Director for the City of Sherwood.
Thanks, Kristen. Jason?
Hello, Jason Waters, City Engineer for the City of Sherwood, coming at you remotely from Palm Springs right now. That's why I'm wearing a hat. Yeah, just providing technical input and feedback and analysis for the project. Happy that it's coming to a conclusion and wrapping up. Thanks.
Thanks, Jason. Is there anyone else from City of Sherwood? Is that it?
I think that's it.
Okay, so I'm just going to go around to the rest of the folks on my screen. Jessica.
Hi everybody, Jessica Pells. I'm a policy analyst with Washington County Land Use and Transportation.
Thanks, Jessica. And Glenn?
Hey there, Glenn Bolin, he, him pronouns, Principal Planner with ODOT Region 1.
Thanks, Glenn. Oh, Glenn Bolin, Glenn Hamburg.
Hi everybody, Glenn Bolin and I are probably doing this often. Glenn Hamburg with Metro. I took the place, if anybody can, of Tim O'Brien when he retired earlier this year. And so my sort of function with all of this is checking off progress related to a Metro grant, assisting with the concept plan, and then also making sure that the concept plan meets the enumerated requirements in the functional plan. So good to say hi to you all.
Thank you, Glenn. And Matt.
Good afternoon, everyone. Matt Gray, Washington County Economic Development. I was reviewing the concept plan this morning. It's really coming along super well. What a great product. I know we're a few years off, but looking forward to working with Bruce Coleman on those employment lands in the north part of the area. So maybe a few years, but thanks.
Thanks, Matt. And let's see who else. Mike.
Hi, everyone. Mike Weston, City Manager with King City. So I'll be just listening in and chiming in when necessary, guys. Otherwise, looks good. Good job.
Thank you, Mike. Gabriella.
Hi, Gabriella Frask, Land Use Planner at McKinsey. And serving here representing NAIOP.
Thanks, Gabriella. And then there's one more person or attendee that's labeled as reschedule or
That's
I'm not sure
Colleen.
if-
Colleen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Let me see if I have my. Yeah, I'm calling with the City of Sherwood Planning Technician.
Thanks, Colleen.
Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share screen here. Let's see where to go. Okay, so here we are. We're just going to kind of give a super quick overview of the concept plan, which you all have in your packet. And then mostly kind of open it up to questions and suggestions. You know, obviously this is a draft, but we're hoping pretty close to final. But obviously we are open to making some last tweaks and revisions if needed. So, and then we'll talk about next steps after that. We don't have any public comment. So just, you know, the contents of the concept plan are, you know, background, overview, a review of the, you know, the overall process and the engagement steps that went into it. There was obviously a lot of very, you know, thorough input from the community advisory committee that was kind of sort of the backbone of this project. And we will be presenting this to them this afternoon and hearing what they have to say about it as well. Vision, goals, and evaluation criteria, fairly brief overview of existing conditions and how we got to the land use alternatives and then the preferred alternative. And then, you know, kind of each of the concept or components of the concept plan, land use, transportation, open space, and utilities. And then the last piece is the implementation piece, which is kind of the only section that we hadn't really discussed a lot with this group or with the community advisory committee. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that section next. And I'm really open to or interested in hearing if folks have any comments about that section in particular. So this kind of just gives a quick summary of the implementation steps. And some of these are just kind of the steps that the city will need to take to, you know, incorporate this area into the urban growth boundary, undergo comprehensive planning and zoning, and then kind of setting the stage for future annexation, construction of infrastructure, and all of those different pieces that are required for development. So obviously the first step would be to request a UGB expansion. So to work with Metro on that request. And that's a decision that will be made by Sherwood City Council. And they have the opportunity to make that request next year in 2024. And then the infrastructure funding strategy is something that you heard from Chris Zahas at Leland Consulting Group at our last TAC meeting, and he kind of presented the sort of overview of that. It's really a preliminary funding strategy at this point. So just kind of highlighting some of the key infrastructure pieces that will need to be built out and extended to, you know, kind of unlock some of the future development opportunities in Sherwood West, especially in that northern employment area, and also in the kind of area around Sherwood High School. And those are kind of the two main focuses of the infrastructure funding, preliminary funding strategy that Leland worked on. And talking about what some of the potential funding tools might be. And their kind of general conclusion was that a supplemental SDC was sort of the most likely major kind of funding contribution to make future development work. And then looking at future zoning and regulations, you know, the city's next step would be to do some comprehensive planning and refinement planning work for Sherwood West. So, you know, adopting land use designations and zoning designations for the area to implement some of the concepts that we have presented in this plan. And of course, additional kind of analysis and research and consideration of natural resources to determine, you know, the level of significance of the various resources that we've, you know, kind of mapped and identified in the concept plan. And going through the ESEE process to determine, you know, how those should be regulated and what the impacts of that might be. We talk about some custom residential zoning that are part of the recommendations for land use and zoning in the plan. And And that's really the two custom zones that we are recommending are, one is for just for cottage clusters, which are a form of middle housing that was really kind of strongly supported by the community through, the surveys that that we did as part of this project, and also by the CAC as kind of an alternative to more typical single detached development that that the community really liked and wanted to make sure that that was kind of was developed in Sherwood West. So that was one. And then it kind of also a more general purpose middle housing zone that would also allow cottage clusters as well as townhomes and duplexes, which again are forms of middle housing that the community really likes and wants to see happen in Sherwood West. And these custom designations would only allow those forms of middle housing, would not allow single detached dwellings, and that would give the city a little bit more flexibility to kind of design their design standards or development standards to kind of tailor them to the Sherwood West context. So that's the strategy there. There's also a recommendation for a new hospitality zone or hospitality overlay. And I think, we recommend that the city undergo some additional evaluation to determine what the right strategy is, whether it's an overlay or a special zone or some other, kind of something else. Not sure exactly what that would be, but I think the city definitely needs to kind of consider what is feasible and what how flexible that zone needs to be, because you don't want to make it too limited so that nothing ends up getting built for many years. And that in the final land use map, the hospitality zone is really kind of the whole southern portion of Sherwood West, just north of Chapman Road, between the highway and then kind of the western portion of the area. We also talk about master planning or village planning as kind of a future kind of planning concept or zoning land use concept, where it offers the city kind of a way to really integrate the open spaces, the transportation, the land uses in a way that kind of is very thoughtful, and you can kind of plan out certain areas, whether it's all of Sherwood West or certain portions, certain designating certain smaller areas as kind of village areas. And I think that has been really effective in places like Wilsonville, which has really embraced the kind of master planning process. And so it's something that, we recommend the city at least consider moving forward. And it could be a city-led process or more of a developer-led process, or, more of a collaboration or a public-private kind of partnership. And then lastly, the future annexation process will also, obviously that's an important and necessary step before development can happen. And in the plan, we recommend the city consider some new annexation policies that are tailored to Sherwood West, so that any land that is incorporated into the area, there are certain requirements for providing the open space and trails and sort of the really critical pieces that are necessary to make this area a really complete and connected community that's in a way that's consistent with the vision for Sherwood West. And then also considering potential annexation agreement, either requirements or opportunities. That's some kind of a strategy that other jurisdictions have used successfully to kind of ensure that what the community's goals and the city's goals for future growth areas are really implemented as part of the annexation and development process. And for transportation and infrastructure, we've laid out, kind of a broad or kind of rough concepts for, where streets might be and how they will be connected. And, this includes sort of realignments in some cases of the ED and Elwert intersection, future kind of very rough concepts for additional north-south connectivity, and connections to the Brookman area to the east. And these are all things that will need a lot more study and evaluation going forward before any plans are finalized. And this is something that we have really tried to emphasize in the concept plan because it's been a point of kind of concern and contention with some of the community members who are just really concerned about roads moving or roads being added in a way that would, impact traffic and impact their neighborhoods negatively. So just reminding them that everything in the plan is really conceptual at this point and requires further study. Public facility plans, of course, will need to be updated, including the TSP, sewer plans, water master plans, and then funding tools. Again, that we have a preliminary infrastructure funding strategy, but those plans will really need to be refined and more detailed once the area is in the UGB and comprehensive plan designations are in place. The city will have kind of more information to make more detailed funding strategies. And then, of course, community engagement should continue to be really something that the city, continues to do as they move forward. And of course, if the area is brought into the UGB and the city is doing refinement planning, comprehensive planning work, that will be another great opportunity to involve community members who have been involved and involving new folks to kind of have another say and have their voices heard in this process. And then the last piece is the Metro Title 11 compliance piece, which, this whole project has been designed to be consistent with Metro Title 11. But we will have, once the plan is accepted and, once we get to that point where we're ready to present it to City Council and the Planning Commission for acceptance, we will have findings for consistency with Title 11. But I'm definitely happy to hear from Glenn if you have any thoughts about anything that we can do to kind of boost the way that those connections are made. And then this is the future kind of development timeline. And this is really meant more for community members to kind of let folks know what this process looks like, and to kind of emphasize that this development in Sherwood West will not be for quite some time. It's not expected to even begin for at least 5 or 6 years after the UGB is expanded. And there's just a lot of pieces that need to fall into place before anything will happen. So, and full kind of build out of Sherwood West isn't expected to happen for 40, 50 years most likely, and it really depends on what the economy does and a whole bunch of other things. So. All right, I think. Oh, and then just, this is just a list of appendices just to point out that the concept plan is a summary of all the work that has been done over the last, I guess, almost 2 years. And a lot of the kind of detailed information is in the appendix in case folks really want to dig into the details and some of the background and the regulatory pieces and things like that. So. And then I guess I'll pause there and see if folks have actual comments on the concept plan before we talk about next steps. Comments or questions? Glenn Hamburg.
Thank you. Yeah, probably the top question I was going to have you already answered, and that is whether there will be written findings. So that's great to hear. We generally prefer that jurisdictions put in their own words how they meet the requirements rather than us try and figure it out. So that's great, including for the city. It was something it was just occurring to me that it's not necessarily a metro criterion, but the cottage cluster zone. I wonder if there's been any conversations, perhaps even with DLCD, about whether or not that zone would have to allow other middle housing types, given that cottage clusters are effectively detached single-family dwellings, just limited in size and clustered around a common courtyard. I don't know, and I don't know how much of a concern it is, but I just, if the city wants to only allow detached single-family dwellings of a limited size clustered around a common courtyard, would just be curious to know whether or not it would also be obligated to allow duplexes, triplexes, etc. So that's one question I have.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, I can say I don't know whether folks at the city have talked to DLCD about this. My general understanding is that cottage cluster, as long as the city is clear about how the form is defined and making it distinct from typical single detached dwellings, that means it would not be subject to the House Bill 2001 requirements and to allow all middle housing as well. I do think that the definitions will be important. And I mean, you raise a good point that effectively cottage clusters can look very similar to single family housing. But they offer a lot more flexibility, and I think that the city really would like to promote them as a form of higher density housing that shares spaces, shares parking areas, that kind of thing, that makes them distinct from more typical single family dwellings.
Also to clarify, so we do have a middle housing designation also, in addition to cottage clusters. So someone could possibly request for cottage clusters in the middle housing zoning that's been already codified in regards to the standards based on House Bill 2001. But what we're possibly considering is a completely different cottage cluster zone where they will have very specific regulations that's tied to it that is not similar to the House Bill 2001 cottage clusters.
Gotcha. Thank you. I had a few more questions, but I'm happy to save them to a later point today if that's better.
Glenn?
Can I just provide another response to Glenn's question on the cottage clusters? I think it would be good for us to clarify and just ask Metro or not Metro, DLC, their take on things. I think part of the concern potentially with saying this is a single family zone is that we might get just straight up traditional single family residences. And, I think the approach here was to try and really encourage and get cottage cluster. And so if we're kind of going in the other direction, then it's possible that we don't get any middle housing. And so this was a way to kind of lean in the other direction. I mean, yes, there's a preference from the city on the type of middle housing. But if we're going in the direction of having to be wide open again, then there's a chance we don't get any middle housing. So I think we wanted to try and guarantee that we got some through and in Sherwood West.
Well, Glenn, if there are no other questions, I think you can keep going. Oh, the other Glenn has a question.
Sure, I'll let the other.
My hand up and I hit the chat button. Hey, when I was looking through, there's one in your strategies and recommendations. There's a comment about preserving properties along 99 for that require access and visibility. I have not looked into it. It's hard to do, but I don't know if there is access allowed. A lot of 99W ODOT owns the access. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't want to accidentally convey to the public that they're going to be putting in driveways on 99W. So I'd hope that that somehow as this moves forward, people understand that access should be taken not off of the highway, but off of a local street.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I don't think that was the intent there. I think it was more like it's accessible because it's on Highway 99 and you can get there from, whatever the interchange is.
Your microphone's getting quite quiet.
Oh, is it quiet? Is that better? No. It's one of these wireless headphones. You never, can you hear me at all? Let me check my settings.
You're kind of soft. Maybe it's batteries. You're a little soft there. I don't know.
and the volume is turned all the way up. I'm gonna switch. Hang on, just give me a second.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Just going through my laptop now. Okay. Sorry about that. Worked. I tested it earlier and it worked fine. Okay. Yes, Glenn, that's a great comment. I think maybe we can just clarify that in the text or use a different word than access.
Yeah, I think visibility makes a lot of sense. Maybe it's something simple as proximity and visibility, right?
Can you all still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know that. Erica, can you talk? I don't know if I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
I do.
Kate, can you hear anybody else?
Kate, can you hear anyone?
Kate?
I don't think she can.
It's okay. She may have to log off and log back on.
For some reason, I can't hear you all now. Settings seem to be correct, but man, this is really annoying. I'm sorry.
We'll give Kate a minute here.
Okay, it's working now. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
So
Technology.
I think while you were
What
doing
did I
here,
miss? I think Glenn Bolin was responding again.
Yeah, I said, I think your word visibility is
Oh,
good. So maybe
now
just
I can't
change
hear
the word
Glenn.
access to proximity. So proximity and, users that require proximity and visibility, that would work.
I've got that down, Glenn. I actually cued in on the access as well, and my brain just kind of made that that leap to what we meant to say without hearkening back to sensitivities around access management on highways. So that's a good catch, and we can certainly switch out that word. It makes a lot of sense. All right, looks like Kate's still working on her settings.
Glenn Hamburg, did you want to ask your other questions?
Yeah, and maybe not so much questions. I'm glad that there'll be written findings, and my reading of it without going back and forth to the criteria in the functional plan is I think it's mostly there. But I just highlighted some things that I thought, oh, this is important. And it would be good for the city in those written findings to just directly point to where it is in the concept plan these things are. So things like the general locations of proposed sewer, water, and storm system facilities, an assessment of the opportunities in these prospective employment areas to create and protect parcels 50 acres or larger, and to cluster uses that benefit from the proximity of being near one another. And then also, I'm sure there's been some coordination with the school district. And so maybe if the city just wants to touch on what that coordination has been, including about sort of demographic assumptions for the future. I guess my sort of read was at different points throughout the concept plan, the criteria are likely met, but having just a simple outline of explaining how it's met could be useful. And then in the employment metrics section, maybe it's useful to make sure that what's discussed is sort of in line with the EOA. And so I caught that, there's this idea that adding more employment land in Sherwood West is intended to help balance the job housing ratio in the city. But then maybe also explaining, trying to kind of keep in line with the assumptions and goals that are also in the EOA, so that they don't just seem like two different documents. And I think that that's it. So thank you, and just congratulations on the team's work. It's awesome.
So could I ask just a clarification? So sort of it seems like there's a two-parter with your comments, Glenn. One is, making a kind of easy crosswalk between the plan and compliance, but internal to the document, kind of more maybe to the tying or making a better case or correlation between the EOA and the declaratory statements in the summary. In the document itself, I know we struggled a bit with making sure that it was complete, that it told a comprehensive story, that it did include all the important steps in major decision making within the last couple of years. But it's chunky, right? It's pretty weighty plan. So are you finding that those connections to, say, the appendices or the work that is referenced but not necessarily included in that kind of roll up? Do we need a little bit more there for cross-referencing, or?
Well, on the employment section of the concept plan, I don't want to say too much about it because it's not really something that Metro has a regulatory role in. It's more of just, hey, I read the EOA, and it makes sort of the case that the city is projecting a deficit in lands to accommodate employment uses, hence the need for more acreage. And maybe I misread it, but in the concept plan, it sort of maybe makes a slightly different argument that actually the need for additional employment lands is to provide space for jobs for people who are already in the city, but are currently maybe commuting outwards. And maybe it's just that both of those things are true, but just as a reader and not necessarily looking at meeting sort of regulatory requirements of Metro, maybe it'd be nice if they sort of kind of said some of the same stories or needs for this additional employment land.
Right, and
I get it. Just making those cross connections.
Yeah, and I just know how much work the city has put into the EOA and kind of making some assumptions, and the concept plan could only benefit, I think, by repeating maybe some of those ideas. And I don't think it's antithetical to what the city is already saying in this draft concept plan. It's just yet more.
Yeah, and I think part of that too was just the timing of our update to the EOA and the timing of doing this concept plan. So that's a great that's a great comment, Glenn.
And of course, as part of the exercise of summarizing everything is really try to make sure the advisory committee's voice comes through as well. So I know that I'm not sure if that specific area is where the language mattered for the advisory committee and the sensitivities there, but it's a good comment.
Any other questions? I think Kate has logged out. Oh, nope, she's still here.
She just came back in.
Yeah, okay.
Right, and I guess I would also just say, since we have some time, if you haven't kind of read through the draft, it is kind of one of those things where it's eyeballs deep and you're kind of in it. Both city staff, I know Kate has been really really kind of like swimming in it. So it's really nice to get some more knowledgeable but more objective readers as well, just to make sure again that it's telling a comprehensive story, that we are making those connections to the technical work when we need that supportive, citation, for example. Those all would be much appreciated. I think we all feel really good about it. I'm actually going to meet with Joe later this month for a beer, and I'm really excited to report the nice things that you've all said. Appreciate that for sure, and I know he's going to be very interested to know how it's going.
And I can hear you all now. Sorry about that. Zoom and my laptop just decided to conspire against me. I'm not sure, but I restarted and that seemed to solve it. Sounds like nice things were said, but also we got some good comments. So,
but yeah, Glenn Hamburg gave us some good some specific tips we can address.
Great.
And those tips really go to the city's findings for compliance.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah. So, did you already talk about the public hearings coming up?
I did not yet.
Okay. I don't have my presentation pulled up anymore, but just in terms of next steps, there is a planning commission and city council joint work session next Tuesday. And then following that in June, late June, there will be a public hearing, tentatively scheduled for June 27th, right? And then city council hearing will follow that July 18th. So, and the city council would be approving it by resolution. So not adopting it as in an ordinance, but approving it. Yeah. So yeah, obviously you're welcome to participate in any of those or attend if you're interested. But otherwise, yes, if you have additional comments on the draft, that would be very helpul.
And I think if you do have any additional comments on that draft, if we could get them within the next 2 weeks, and you could just email those comments to me.
Yeah, that would be great. And just want to second what Erica said in thanking you so much for participating and providing your wisdom and technical expertise. And yeah, it's been a fun time. Very happy to be wrapping it up. All right. Well, unless there are final words, thanks again for being here today. And we'll hear from you via email. Otherwise, thank you and take care.
Best.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you later.